Hello, this is Mr. Buffington from Simplify Academy, and we are looking at terms, factors, coefficients, and variables today. Lots to cover. Let's get into it. We are going to discuss each of those things. We'll learn about what a term is, what a coefficient and variable are, and what factors are inside of an expression. First of all, let's define some of our vocabulary here. A variable and a coefficient. The variable is the letter and the coefficient is the number. Sometimes the coefficient is called a constant, depending on which math classes you're taking or who you're taking it from. This is an example of a term, 12a. In this term, 12 is the coefficient and a is the variable. So inside of any term like that, you need to be able to just say basically what is the number, the coefficient, and what's the letter. Let's do some quick practice here. If I have this term 13x, what is the coefficient and what is the variable? 13 is the coefficient, x is the variable. That's pretty much it when it comes to coefficients and variables. You need to be able to identify that the coefficient is the number, the variable is the letter. Now, factors, this is going back a couple of units, but factors are numbers that multiply together to give you a product. For example, 5 times 4 is 20, so 5 and 4 are factors of 20. Well, this also works with variables because remember, when you have an expression like 12 times x, x is just representing a placeholder for a number. So 12 times x equals 12x, therefore 12 and x are factors of 12x. It sounds more complicated with variables, believe me, I know, but it's exactly the same as what we've looked at before. So if you are asked to identify the factors inside of a term, 12 is one factor and x is another factor. Now, let's talk about terms. I've used this vocabulary before. A term is a coefficient and or variable or variables. So 4x is a term. A is also a term. It's just a variable by itself, but it would be a term. 5 is also a term. It's just a coefficient or a number, but it would also be considered a term on its own. Maybe you have two variables, a, b, next to each other. Maybe you have three variables, 12, a, b, c. So in this one, I've got a coefficient of 12 and three variables. That is still a term. A term is, again, a coefficient and or variables together as one single thing that you're going to read. Terms are separated by addition and subtraction. For example, this 2a plus 3b is two terms. 2a is one term, 3b is a different term, and they are separated by addition in this case. So let's do just a little bit of practice with that. I know it's a lot to swallow. It's a lot of vocabulary for a math lesson, believe me. All right, how many terms are inside of this expression? 5x plus 6y minus 8z. How many terms are there? Well, there are three terms. 5x, 6y, and 8z. Do you see that? There are three separate terms inside there, and you could even expand this further and say that each term has two factors. 5x is 5 times x, 6y is 6 times y, and 8z is 8 times z. So that's how we're going to be talking about this, all right? In the words of terms and factors. So here we go. Let's practice just a little bit. I want you to tell me what are the factors of this term, 7abc. What are the factors of this term? Well, the factors are 7, a, B, and C. Because 7ABC means 7 times A times B times C. We don't write in the multiplication for each of them. And that's where variables become a little bit more complex. But these are all factors inside there. There are 4 factors inside of this term. Let's practice that a little bit. I want you to tell me how many terms and factors there are for this expression, 14AC plus 3DE. How many terms? Let's start with that. How many different terms are there? Well, there's 2 terms. There's 14AC, that's one term, and 3DE, that's our second term. Remember, terms are separated by addition or subtraction. Now let's look at how many factors. 14AC has 14 times A times C. That has 3 factors. And 3DE has 3 times D times E. So both terms have 3 factors, or each term has 3 factors. Okay? And this is the type of question you're going to get on the worksheet. You'll be given an expression like this and say, identify the terms and factors, or how many terms and factors. That's going to be one of the more oft used questions on the worksheet. Now, let's talk about variable or coefficients and variables real quick. I want you to identify the coefficient and the variable. This is a review from the beginning of our lesson. We've done so much vocabulary, we need to recap it. What's the coefficient and variable? 25 is the coefficient, P is the variable. 25P is our term that has both a coefficient and a variable. I want you to now identify what is the coefficient of x. I'm giving you a big expression that has a lot of information in there. What's the coefficient of x? Well, 13 is the coefficient of x. The rest of the entire expression, you don't need to solve this question, right? You don't need the plus 2y minus 7z. That stuff is not important for answering this question. All you needed was the first term, so that you could identify that 13 is the coefficient of x. All right, another practice. How many terms and factors? This one here is a little different than what we've done before. Go ahead and try that out. Pause and practice. How many terms are there and how many factors in each term? We are back and we're going to look at the 4 terms. There's 14AC, that has 3 factors. 14 times A times C, 3 factors. X is by itself as a single term, and it is therefore 1 factor. 6y is 6 times y, so that is 2 factors. And then our number at the end, that coefficient or constant, is just a single factor by itself. All right? That is a lot of practice. If you got all of that, then you are ready for everything that you'll see in the worksheet. I do want to review the type of question that will be asked in the worksheet. It might say this: identify the terms and factors, and then give you an expression. What it's looking for is not necessarily that you list out all the factors of each term, but that you would identify that there are 3 terms and that each term has 2 factors, so that you'll be able to count or answer how many factors are there in each term. How many terms, how many factors, and that you understand what that means. So 8x is my first term, and it has 2 factors, 8 and x. 2y is my second term, and it has the factors of 2 and y. And then 5z is my third term that has 2 factors, 5 and z. All right, lots to remember. We use the vocabulary terms, coefficients, factors, and variables. I know it's a lot to remember, so it makes it really important that you practice using that worksheet. Good luck with that. and have a wonderful day.